personal views concerning the administration's 2011 budget as it pertains to America's role in the future of human space exploration. 1 month ago, Neil Armstrong, Jim Lovell, and I released an opinion paper expressing our concern over the administration's proposed space budget. We spent a great deal of time writing and refining over and over again this document, choosing our words very carefully. Words like devastating, slide to mediocrity, and third-rate stature, primarily because we did not want to be misunderstood, nor did we want to be misinterpreted. We particularly wanted to avoid any political overtones because since the beginning days of NASA, its support has come from traditionally bipartisan politics. It has transcended our political differences. We have recently heard a lot of eloquent verbiage about the exploration of space, landing on an asteroid, circling Mars, and someday maybe even landing on a red planet. There is talk about a decision yet to come about building a large booster, which might ultimately someday almost take us to the far reaches of this universe. There are, however, no details, no specific challenge, and no commitment as to where or specifically when this exploration might come to pass. And when one examines in detail the 2011 budget, nowhere can be found one penny, not one penny, allocated to the support of space exploration. Yes, there has been much rhetoric about transformative technology, heavy lift propulsion, research, robotic precursor missions. And these are all very worthwhile endeavors, yet nowhere do we find any mention of human space exploration. And nowhere do we find a commitment in dollars to support this national endeavor. Neil, Jim Lovell, and I have come to a unanimous conclusion that this budget proposal presents no challenges, has no focus, and is in fact a blueprint for a mission to nowhere. In this proposed budget, we find several billions of dollars allocated to developing commercial human access to low Earth orbit, based upon the assumptions and claims by those competing for this elusive contract who say they can achieve this goal in a little more than 3 years, and they can do it for something less than $5 billion. Based upon my personal experience and what I believe is possible, I believe it might take as much as a decade, a full decade, and the cost may be 2 to 3 times as much as they predict. Although I strongly do support the goals and ideals of commercial access to space, the folks who propose such a limited architecture do not yet know what they don't know. There is a myriad of technical challenges in their future yet to be overcome, safety considerations which cannot be overlooked or compromised, as well as a business plan and investors they will have to satisfy. All this will lead to unplanned delays, which will cost the American taxpayer billions of unallocated dollars and lengthen the gap from shuttle retirement to the day we can once again access low Earth orbit, leaving us hostage as a nation to foreign powers for some indeterminate time in the future. This may be a sensitive point because I'm going to mention something about a dear friend who I ultimately have the ultimate respect for, Charlie Bolden, because we did have a briefing last week. And it was in that briefing that Charlie expressed some concern over the potential of the commercial sector to be successful in any reasonable length of time. He indicated we might have to subsidize them until they are successful. And I can say with authority because I wrote this down and I put the words wow right next to it because Charlie did say it may be a bailout like GM and Chrysler. As a matter of fact, it may be the largest bailout in history. The United States, through NASA, has spent a half a century, Mr. Chairman, learning what we didn't know, finding answers to questions we weren't smart enough to ask at the time, developing technology that was needed to meet a challenge and get the job done. We came from Alan Shepard's flight in 1961 to the space shuttle and the International Space Station today. By the way, with a side trip or two to the moon along the way. The evolution of this learning process was not without cost, not just in dollars, but in the lives of our friends and our colleagues. It took the courage, the effort, the dedication, and the self-sacrifice of thousands of Americans out there who allowed us to come this far, this quickly. And although we paid dearly for our mistakes, it is a testimonial to their commitment and American ingenuity that everyone who went to the moon came home. Therein is a lesson we cannot afford to ignore, and I ask the question, is this the NASA we want to transform? For the sake of time, I will not go into my thoughts and concerns about game-changing technology without a goal, or the fact that we may or may not someday make a decision to build a heavy-lift booster, or the fact that I have major concerns about an Orion light, because I went into detail in my written testimony. But let me go back to Constellation, because it's an architecture that over a 5-year period has gone through detailed review processes and been vetted by every government agency from the OMB to the DoD and certainly by NASA, by every agency that has any ownership interest in any technical, scientific budget or benefit that might be derived from human space exploration. In addition, an arsenal of the best engineers and scientists, many of them who were yours over the years, and management experts in America's aerospace community added their knowledge and expertise to a review of the proposed Constellation architecture before it ever became a program worthy of consideration. And appropriately, as has been said already, under the law, both houses of Congress, overwhelmingly with bipartisan support, approved and agreed that Constellation should go forward. It is unknown how much time and thought was put into the existing budget proposal for 2011, or by whom this proposal was generated, but it is common knowledge that few, if any, of those government agencies referred to above were asked to participate. Nor of significant note was the DoD or the engineering or management expertise that exists throughout NASA today. This leads one to the conclusion that this proposal was most likely formulated in haste within the Office of Management and Budget and or the OMB, with little or with no input by his own admission in previous testimony, the NASA administrator, or I know for a fact by NASA center directors or senior NASA management. And if that were the case, the originators were quite likely promoting their own agenda rather than that of NASA and America's commitment to human space exploration. The space program has never been an entitlement. It's an investment in the future, an investment in technology and jobs, in world respect and leadership, and perhaps most importantly, in the inspiration and the education of our youth. Mr. Chairman, you asked how much of the budget was gone into education. That goes into paperwork and the spin-off information. The inspiration for our youth, came when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. It's a freebie that comes from space exploration. Those best and the brightest minds at NASA and throughout the multitudes of the private contractors, large and small, did not join the team to design windmills, but to live their dreams of once again taking us where no man has gone before. In closing, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say America's human spaceflight program has for a half a century risen above partisan differences, from Eisenhower to Kennedy to the present day. The challenges and accomplishments of the past were those of a nation, never of a political party, nor were they of any individual agenda. Those flags which fly today in those valleys on the moon are not blue flags and they're not red flags. They're American flags. If we abdicate our leadership in space today, not only is human spaceflight and space exploration at risk, but I personally believe the future of this country and thus the future of our children and grandchildren as well. Now is the time for wiser heads in Congress of the United States to prevail. Now is the time to overrule this administration's pledge to mediocrity. Now is the time to be bold, innovative, and wise in how we invest in the future of America.